Did you remember to put on your sitcom glasses for this one?
What are sitcom glasses?
Sitcom glasses are those forgiveness glasses that you have to put on for a show that has either a laugh track or one that's labeled a sitcom. Because, the humor isn't going to be as funny as or cutting as a dark comedy.
Well, thankfully, Grownish doesn't have a laugh track, but I already knew that this was going to be tackling some pretty big issues because Blackish did that all the time, right?
And did you watch Blackish?
I watched a couple episodes of it, but I believe it was maybe my freshman year in college where I saw that there was a serious episode of Blackish, and I clicked on it because it was a YouTube clip, and then I saw that Blackish had a ton of those clips, and I was like, wait, what exactly is this show? And I learned that, it tackles pretty serious issues almost every episode.
I think Grownish, or at least that's what I've been reading, is that Grownish took what's been happening the last few years and really went into the whole social commentary on race issues, while Blackish, when it first started, despite the title, was supposed to be a lighter comedy about a guy who was super rich with a family who didn't want to completely lose his identity with the melting pot of every world. I remember one of the first previews was about how his kid wanted a bar mitzvah. In fact, the main character of this show, because that is his kid.
Okay, so he moved on to this show.
Yeah, well, his sister did first. His sister's the one who got the original spin-off a few years ago, and then after season 4, she graduated, and then her brother took over.
Because I wanted to see, you have Blackish, you have Mixed-ish, which apparently was canceled 2 seasons in, and then you have Grownish. My question was, what is going on in the Ish universe?
You have Oldish as well, which was going to have Lawrence Fishburne and the grandpa set storyline, but then they never moved on with that. Did you know Modern Family was also supposed to have a spin-off at one point?
What was it supposed to be
called? Do you want to guess? No. Guess who it was supposed to follow.
Who's the kid, the Phil Dunphy's, the son?
No, it wasn't him.
No? Okay. No. That's my best guess.
It was the gay couple and their daughter.
It was just supposed to be a show about them?
Yes, and I think ABC just passed.
But Modern Family...
It went for 10 seasons.
Modern Family is already about them.
If they're popular enough, I think it's kind of like when we were talking about Solar Opposites and you were saying that The Wall was originally thought to have maybe a spin-off. Yeah. And that was always a big part of the show. It's not like back in the day when you'd have the Andy Griffith Show and there would be one random character who would be Gomer Pyle and he'd be working the gas station and then suddenly he gets a complete show for himself and he's joining the army and he's doing hijinks like that. Let's jump into the show. Grownish is a single-camera comedy that follows Andre Johnson Jr. on his journey through adulthood as he attends Cal U. The Freeform show spun off of ABC's Blackish in 2018. Now, 6 seasons later, it's concluding with a 2-part season, the second half of which will be released in early 2024. So we're getting in early.
Yes, 6
Family
seasons.
Feud. Okay. Yeah.
I was just going to say 6 seasons. I didn't know that this show existed until a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, the pandemic did some weird stuff. It just made things go by faster. So we're in the 6th season of Grownish. Family Feud is the title of this 8th episode that came out August 16th, the topic of our discussion. Welcome to today's episode. You ready for some South Korean facts?
South Korea?
Yeah.
What does that have to do with Grownish?
Well, there's going to be a few sprinkled in here, but the first thing I wanted to tell you was that South Korea, actually every South Korean in the world got a year younger last month.
Wait, what? How?
Yeah, so under the way that they used to do their ages was that when a baby was born, they were immediately 1 year old. And then every January 1st, they became 2 years old. Or the next year passed.
Yeah, the next year.
So if you were born on December 30th, then you would be 1 year old, and then that January 1st, I think you would become 2. So you would be 2 before you know it.
Can you imagine, imagine someone being really sad they're about to, miss their 20s and then being 30,
exactly
and then going back
they
a
had
year
interviews
and being
for people being
yay!
I'm about to turn 30. And now they get to be 27, 28 again. The thing about it, though, is that they went back to the international timeline just last month. It became official, so no one can do that anymore unless they're unofficially doing it. But that's just interesting. I had no idea. So how old is Steven Yeun actually? 16. Okay. In season 5, everybody saw the torch officially pass from his sister Zoe to Andre Johnson Jr., a.k.a. just Jr.
So season 5,
yes.
You're saying that Andre was the main character, yet they're only going to follow him for 2 seasons?
Yeah, I don't know exactly why, but remember in Elite? I think they did something
Yes.
similar, right? Where after season 3 or season 4, and we did the first episode of season 5, that the whole old cast had just left.
I was very sad about that. I saw that Anthony Anderson is an executive producer for this show, obviously, because I think he created Blackish. But
and I'm sure he's been
I was going to ask if he's made an appearance.
Yeah. Not only has he made an appearance, but the show creator has made an appearance. In fact, I think you saw him in this episode.
Was he Derek Wright or was he Dean Carnegie?
Okay, I think he was Derek Wright, because that's supposed to be the alum, the disgraced alum. Yes, and the other guy that you mentioned just happens to be. So there have been a lot of black-centric sitcoms over the years. Most recently, you had in the 2000s, you had My Wife and Kids, Bernie Mac, Everybody Hates Chris. Then more recently, The Carmichael Show, The Neighborhood, Blackish, the Upshaws. And then earlier on, you had Fresh Prince, Living Single, the Jamie Foxx, Wayne Bros shows, and before that, obviously Cosby Show. But the spin-off to the Cosby Show, which I didn't know existed until now, was a show called A Different World. And this show, Grownish, has been compared very much to that, because a Cosby Show didn't necessarily delve into race issues as much as just be a kind of stepping stone, even though you had the Jeffersons and such before that. But A Different World took place, I think, in a college as well, and it starred, what's his face? The guy that you just mentioned.
Derek Wright?
No, Dean Miller, the guy who played Kadeem.
Dean Carnegie.
Yeah, Kadeem Hardison, yeah.
That's the actual actor's name.
Yeah, Kadeem Hardison is the actor's name. His name in the show is Dean Miller.
Yeah, because what happens is Andre, he is the VP. I was trying to figure out what happened to the president of this Gamma fraternity. Because,
the frat?
Yeah, because Andre continually calls himself the VP. He doesn't say that he is the president. They don't want Derek Wright, who we get introduced to at the very beginning of the episode. He is someone, it was actually one of the funniest parts, where his first line is, "Where are all the bitches at?" And he's talking about, he's telling these...
He shouted that, though, right?
Yes.
It's that's something you say as you walk into the room, but not actually saying.
Well, no, but he's also talking about how when he was back at the fraternity, he was doing heroin and cocaine, and how that's not always a bad thing. That whole montage that they showed was really funny, but he is wanting to throw a donation ceremony at the Gamma House, and then Andre and kind of everyone else is saying that they don't want that to happen. They even tell Dean Carnegie, who set up the meet between Derek Wright and the fraternity, about that happening. But Dean Carnegie cares a lot about money, because he wants this donation ceremony to happen.
Did you ever have people in your college work for the phone banks? Because I remember, my friends felt terrible about it, but they still had to do it just because they needed the income, where you would call alums constantly and just berate them hey, so the school wants you to pay some money.
No, I didn't even know that was a thing.
You don't remember that?
Pay money to come back, or just pay money for a donation?
No, just for donations.
Okay. Well, here, Derek Wright is
kind of like blood drives, you know?
Derek Wright is almost all for it.
Yes.
So it seems like Dean Carnegie, he really wants this donation ceremony to happen, but it just has to happen at the Gamma House. But Andre has really tried to make this Gamma House not like a fraternity back in the 80s and 70s, where it was just
not like a Kavanaugh fraternity.
More PC and more modern.
I have a question, though, because you were saying all the people there. Who does that include? Who are his friends that you meet?
There's someone, I think, that's called No Shirt Nick, who doesn't wear a shirt the entire time. That's his one trait.
Okay.
And then it seemed like that was all that we got introduced to.
Wait. So what about Doug? What about Cole? Where are those people?
Here's the thing. Doug, I believe that he's left college. He's a bartender.
Oh, okay.
So he started the show in college.
I don't know about that. I thought that he's main from season 3 present, which I thought meant that he was part of the crew, the second cast crew, but I guess he was in season 1 and season 2.
You do have Andre go up to him a couple times, and he has the quickest side storyline with his girlfriend Sloan. Sloan, I think, has gone on a few girl trips or something of that sort, and has been really disappointed, and Doug throws her a nice dinner. It's
just weird because they get a lot of famous rappers and a lot of R&B singers, and so Sloan is Lotto, and then Doug is Diggy Simmons, and Diggy Simmons I didn't really know about, but apparently Lupe Fiasco formed a hip-hop collective back in the early 2010s with Asher Roth, Bob, the Cool Kids, Charles Hamilton, Blue, Diggy Simmons, J. Cole, Dosage. And what they ended up doing was Diggy Simmons was like, at that age, super young. So he was actually the youngest one.
Now that you say that, because Little Yachty is in this show, he plays Cole Hudson. I didn't know who I knew who Little Yachty was. I didn't know which character he played, but now that you say that, that was, I believe, like maybe the second in command. It seemed like it, Andre's friend, who comes with them with some damaging information about Derek Wright later on in the episode.
So Lil Yachty shows up with like this secret information to be like, hey, this is bad about this guy.
Yeah, well, the thing that I was enjoying about the first half of the show, because the summary is it going to happen? Is this fraternity going to let Derek Wright hold this donation ceremony? And even Dean Carnegie is going to this person named Jackson that apparently is roommates with Andre and saying, I'm going to need you to pressure them to have this donation ceremony go on. I was enjoying the debate as to whether it was going to happen or not. It was, and it seemed pretty easy to follow. But then the second half of the episode was what I wasn't that big a fan of, because it started to get really kind of confusing. The moral message also became very murky.
Ooh, what do you mean by that?
Because, so at the very end of the episode, they're going to let this thing happen because Jackson threatens rain hell on Andre and the Gamma House with suspensions and fines that have been overlooked throughout the years if they don't let this donation ceremony happen. And then it comes to a group vote in the Gamma House, and Andre decides that, yes, they will let Derek Wright have this ceremony
So no one's playing moral police quite yet. No one's coming in there.
It was one of those things where it was all up to Andre, because half the people were saying yes and half the people were saying no.
He played Kamala Harris.
Yes.
He was the VP. That's the VP's job. He splits Congress, so that's why he's the VP.
Probably, yeah.
Okay,
but I was actually trying to figure out what happened to the president. They probably showed it in earlier episodes. But with Jackson, what happens is, as the ceremony is going on, as Derek Wright is about to go up there, and as he's about to give his speech and give the check, that's when Lil Yachty, Cole Hudson, goes to Andre and says, listen, it turns out that there's just been some information that leaked about Derek Wright. He's going to be purchasing this very, very far-right network. They even say the name Candace Owens on there. And anyone knows that, yeah, it's going to be a far-right network.
But it's a made-up network. It's not like he's going on to the Epoch Times.
I feel like it's supposed to be owned, though. That's basically what they're saying.
Okay.
He's going to buy this thing. And then that makes Jackson, who has kind of had reservations about going after the Gamma House, especially with his friendship with Andre, and has been bullied by Dean Carnegie to do those veiled threats, is like, you know what, I'm going to flip. And then as Derek Wright is giving this speech and as he's handing over the check, that's when you have Jackson. He goes up there and he says, and also what Derek Wright has said is that he's going to give a lot of money to the Gamma House, and just kind of putting words in his mouth. It was so strange because, one, Derek Wright doesn't try to offset this at all. He doesn't try to say, actually, I didn't say that at all, or anything of that sort.
Can you see him get pissed about it, though?
No, he's actually like respecting. He says, pretty subtle mood, I respect it, which didn't make any sense, because it's like you are literally going to have to give up millions and more dollars for someone that is actually lying to you.
I guess, and if you're rich enough.
Where I say the murky message comes in, or moral message, is that it seemed like the show took the cop out, because it was like, I wanted to see, were they going to let this donation ceremony happen? Weren't they? But it was, yes, they are going to let this donation ceremony happen, but also they're going to be getting more money for it.
Sure.
And I just was trying to understand what exactly is going on here.
Maybe it didn't want to be too preachy, and then it also wanted to provide some form of in between, where this guy is, he's an asshole, but he's not a complete, he shouldn't be in jail.
Well, the thing is,
right?
Derek Wright, whenever we see him, he's not a good guy. He's not a role model. No, he shouldn't be in jail. But it's not like he ever said that he wasn't going to purchase a TV network, and he was always kind of seen as the antagonist this episode. So just to make him worse, I guess, than they already thought that he was going to be, is what made Jackson flip. But it was already we already knew he wasn't a good guy. This isn't like a change in character or anything.
I'll give you a comparison, though. Like when we did Painkiller, and that again is about the Sackler family. Arthur Sackler, the guy who really kicked it off, had so much money. He loved his art collections. He donated to a ton of schools so that his name would be on the front of a bunch of buildings.
Yeah.
But they made a big point of talking about that after the whole opioid crisis and his family's skeletons came out. A lot of schools have just taken their names completely off of everything and no longer accepted their donations and stuff. And so this versus that, I feel like Sackler's problems are the ones where the school has to take action. And a guy like this is, yeah, it's not great that he went to your university, and it's not great that he's a representative model for your university. But at the same time, there's a little bit of finesse there that you can play with because and still get away with taking his money.
But it seems like the stakes are almost so low in this episode.
Yeah.
I liked the whole entire will it happen or won't it happen section. But it was like all that's going to have to happen is Derek Wright is going to give them this money at Gamma House. And even Jackson, I was actually more on the side that I think the show didn't want you to be on for a majority of the episode, where it's like they're talking about how they're going to be getting a lot more funding, how that's probably going to be going to scholarships and teams and things that college genuinely need a lot of money for. So I was like, yeah, sure, the source that you're getting it from isn't that great. We see that Derek Wright is a scumbag. You don't need to spend long with him to figure that out. But it was almost like, why don't you just accept the money and then kind of, I guess, shield your eyes?
Well, it goes back to, did you put your sitcom glasses on? Because it's sort of...
I did, and here's the thing. The show is entertaining. It's well acted. There were some funny things about it, and it's tackling good issues. And that's why I can see why... That's why I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. And it does pass.
The first 4 seasons, their big complaint after a while was that the writing got a little lazy. Too many love triangles, for sure. So were there any love triangles here?
Well, not from what I saw this episode.
With Zoe, so it wasn't that same character. But then also that they did go hard into trying to be like, we got to talk about George Floyd, we got to talk about the COVID, we got to do every topical issue. I feel like
that's genuinely what a lot of shows do. I mean, social connecting, whichever one the Netflix one
both
was.
of which only lasted 1 season.
But I remember that was even bringing up things like George Floyd and
I know, but a lot of people like to watch TV for escapism, and yes, Grownish inherently has the element of like, we got to talk a little bit about race. But
I don't know how many people watch shows for escapism anymore, because it seems like every single show nowadays is always trying to bring up what's happening in the real world.
That doesn't necessarily make them successful, though, and we've seen a lot of shows fall on their face because of it. Compared to other college-based shows, though, because there aren't too many of those.
I actually have a list of comparisons here, and one of them is Community.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one, because he was older, though. I never think of Community as, like, a typical college show, because he's not 19 years old.
I had it paired with Abbott Elementary, but they're both comedies that are dealing with schools, and all of them are dealing with, like, issues that kind of come along with that.
Well, Community was more on a lighter note, though.
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to say between Greek, Dear White People, and Cheese in the Trap, which is this falling into?
Okay, first off, I know you know that I don't know what Cheese in the Trap is.
You don't know Cheese in the Trap? Park Hye Jin from Man to Man's in it, Kim Go Yoon, the main girl in Coin Locker Girl, and Never Die Butterfly? How about Seo Kang Joon, the guy from Entourage?
No.
He was one of the stars in Entourage, the Korean 2016 spinoff from...
Okay. Wait, no, I know about that. Yeah. I know about that.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
How about Lee Sung-kyung? She was from Weightlifting Fairy Kim Buk-ju. What? Weightlifting Fairy Kim Buk-ju. And Dr. Romantic 2 and 3.
Can you just tell me what the summary of the show is? Do you actually know what the show is?
Yeah, I actually do. It's an overachieving freshman girl who starts dating this manipulative senior, and that's about it. The person who passed on taking the main secondary role in that, Bae Suzy, she was actually in Psy's last music video, the one that came out after the one that he did with BTS.
Do you remember what year that was?
She was also in Startup. What year?
Yeah, what year that music video came out?
2022. It was last year.
So almost only last year.
Don't you remember last year, Psy popped up in YouTube trending again, and he was doing a BTS one, and then like a week later, she did a video with him. I just don't remember the name. But she was also in a show called Startup, which has nothing to do with the other startup that we've done.
Yeah.
It's so weird, like Korean shows kind of parallel American ones.
I was actually going to say this show is more like Malcolm in the Middle. Okay. It has Andre breaking the fourth wall a lot. In fact, one of my cons is that it almost seemed like it was a complete ripoff with almost the things that Andre was even saying to the audience. You can also loop in Saved by the Bell reboot, but the fourth wall breaks in Saved by the Bell were way worse and I think more annoying than the ones that were happening here. Mm-hmm. I'm a Virgo just in regards to race and social issues. The bust down, the friend groups in this show is like the fraternity in this one, and then Atlanta actually in some different parts of it. Dean Carnegie is kind of like Kevin Samuels in the episode that he showed up in, I think the penultimate episode of season 3, and then Derek Wright is like Kevin Samuels in real life.
Okay. What'd you think of the song that plays him out or starts him out?
The song that starts him out?
So the intro.
I didn't really listen to it that much.
Okay, because I think that's the same one that was made by Chloe X Halle, which is the two sisters that one of them went on to do Little Mermaid, and she was also in the show for the first 4 seasons as a main character. But yeah, so I was just curious if again, a lot of rappers, a lot of singers, a lot of entertainers.
Yeah, you have Omarion show up as a cameo at the very end of it, because that's one of the things that Doug does for Sloane, because they talk about him earlier on in the episode, and he just shows up as himself and starts dancing, I think to his own music, which is kind of funny at the very end. Mm-hmm. That's the last scene of the show.
All right, anything else you want to talk about with the show?
Yes, actually, so Jackson, I found this predictable. I thought the show was doing it in a subtle way, but it was actually supposed to be kind of a twist. When he was giving all these threats to Andre, that's what makes him decide that they're going to do this donation ceremony. At the very end of it, Jackson reveals that he wasn't actually ever going to go through with the threats, with all the fines and suspensions, because again, they're living together, and Andre then is like, you know what, actually, no, I'm out of here because you did that. So he packs up his bags and he leaves. And
so that's going to have factors into the future episodes. Okay, so it's weird because I may have miswritten this, but it says Aaron Jackson is played by Trevor Jackson.
By Trevor Jackson?
Yeah, but I think I got his last name right. Do you like shows that do this? Things like Skins or Scrubs, or where they try to pass the guard to the next one halfway through, as opposed to canceling
whenever they do try to pass the guard, I don't see it working that much.
But it's cool that they do, because it usually saves the first part of the show. Like with Skins, had they continued 3-4 seasons through with Tony and the rest of them in the British version, I don't know if that would have survived.
Well, it's even sometimes not just passing the guard as much as maybe even getting rid of too many characters. Westworld kind of fell into that same thing where it was after the first 2 seasons and they started introducing and changing the show too much, it was a completely different show.
I agree with you. All right, well, thanks for listening. We'll see you in the next episode. Hope you enjoyed this one. 6 out of 10, right?
6 out of 10.
All right, bye.
Bye.